everybody, and welcome back to Roaring Twenties podcast. Today we have on with us Jera Fosterfell. You know her as Jera Bean on Instagram. She is a social media coach and the founder of her signature course, the Social Media Saloon. Oh my God, we're having trouble talking today, but here we are. We're so excited. Hey, Jera, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me on. And let me tell you, I was just talking the other day on a big Zoom call, and there's like words that I kept messing up and tripping. I don't know. There's something in the air. It's cool. I'm right there with you.
Astrology. There's something in the stars. We're not all there, but it's okay. We're gonna get there. We're gonna be here. We're gonna do it all.
Hells yeah.
So, Jera, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, where you're from, and how old you are, since it's Roaring Twenties.
Ooh, all right. Well, the quick summary here. My name is Jera. My mom got that name because she was pregnant with me and had a dream that told her to name her that. So fun
way.
Yeah, I have no idea how that happened, but that's how she says it sort of came to be. So that's sort of the name of Jera for you. And I grew up in New York City, grew up in Manhattan, and went to school out at USC in Los Angeles. I was a fine art major focusing on graphic design. So those were kind of my creative design arty days. And I lived in Boston for a little bit after that, then back to New York. I've lived in Austin now for just over a year with my husband and my spicy grandpa 16-year-old senior dog. And I had to think about this for a second. I'm 31. I'm like, wait, am I 32? Like
it's hard. It's hard.
But I'll be 32 in June, which just honestly feels really weird to say, but there you go.
Well, we've heard 30s are like all the rage, you know.
You know what? I gotta agree with that. Life's a little bit easier when you're 30. Yeah. I feel good about that.
Yeah. The more we hear it, we're like, okay, it's gonna be all right. Yeah. We'll
make peace with it.
Yeah. They're just like life's more low key. I like being at home. I like going to sleep early.
I love all those things.
There's less of like an emotional roller coaster. Just a little bit more stagnant in a very peaceful way.
Incredible.
Sounds nice.
You guys, so much to look forward to.
Yes, it's good over the 30 line.
Yes. But so incredible. There's so much to your story. I feel like the more and more that we like looked into, you know, your background and all the things, we're like, holy crap, like she is the definition of someone that's evolved into different things and gave herself permission to evolve. But we want to hear the details all from you. So now you're a social media coach. So how did you end up in this specific space, and how has that shifted over time?
So to give you kind of things in a nutshell, because it's all connected, the pivots and the twists and the turns are all related to each other, which is always kind of fun looking back and seeing how it evolved, because when you're in the process, you have no friggin' idea what the heck is happening. So it's like, hindsight's 2020. I get that phrase now. So to kind of start us off in the 2015 realm, this is when I was a graphic designer. I was at a job for some time that very much manipulated me, did not treat me right. I think if you added up what I was actually making per hour due to the extreme overworkingness that was happening, it was probably like a couple bucks. It was just crazy. It was over the top. I was losing hair. I had a bald patch on my head. I should have been hospitalized for exhaustion. I was struggling with social anxiety. Like everything was just kind of going against me. It was not the most positive and productive and light time of my life. But because of this is really this moment that I look back on. Somehow I know the date, April 4th, 2015. It all led me to this moment where I downloaded a workout guide, BBG, it was called, Bikini Body Guide, back in the day, which people have probably heard of, by Kayla Encinas. And I started to work out, and there was no conscious decision where I was like, I need to do something positive for myself. But I think some sort of external force was like, you got to do something to get yourself out of this hole a little bit. And so I started that workout guide, started an Instagram account the same day because I saw other women doing that. And I thought, cool. Like I want to kind of jump in on this. I desperately needed community and friendship at the time. And that's kind of what started Instagram for me. I was so excited to be working out and doing something positive for myself, both externally and internally. I was connecting right away to other women doing the same exact week and day of the exercise as me. So there was a camaraderie there that really pulled me into the Instagram community and sort of that whole new chapter of my life. And it was a creative outlet. So I was taking photos, I was writing captions. This part really excited me and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So that's how Instagram began for me. And also fitness was a large part of that journey for a couple of years. So fitness changed my life. I just freaking fell in love with it. My whole account was all about fitness at the time. I fell in love with SoulCycle, and that was a 2-year journey of my life, becoming an instructor and teaching for about a year and a half. And then after that, I decided to pursue Instagram just as a lifestyle content creator full time, which I did for about a year and a half before thinking, all right, I love this content creator thing. It's not that I don't like it. It's not that I want to change. I want to add something else into the mix, partly from a passion standpoint. I wanted to be doing something else. And also from a smart strategic standpoint. Like, I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket from a financial view. What else can I add? How else can I be making money? And so it was that spawned my initial journey to becoming a social media coach. I hired a business coach. By the way, best decision I made. Invest in yourself, do it. Sometimes you need help. And that's how I developed the Social Media Saloon, which is my signature 3-month group coaching course where I teach business owners, product-based businesses, service-based businesses, as well as content creators, how to use Instagram as a really powerful and positive tool.
Oh, amazing. I love so many aspects of that. I'm really interested that you said that you went to social media right in the beginning for community, because I think, and Brenda and I have found that social media does create opportunity for so much community, especially when we've all been locked inside for so long. But I think it's sometimes we like lose sight of that, and like it's so much about comparison or like competition, but really it is this like wonderful place for community. So I love that your story started there, because obviously that's very clear through what you do now, that it is about engagement and community. So I love that was the start of it for you. But I'm curious, I know a lot of people like in their 20s, especially, like shifting what we think we're going to do with our lives or our dreams or our goals can feel really scary, or feel like maybe we failed at something. What was your experience when it came to like making these changes from the job that you absolutely hated to the SoulCycle to now what you do? Did you have any experience of like, I failed at that one thing, or fear in when it comes to like changing your goal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest failure career-wise, in a way, which I look back on it now and it's like maybe not the biggest deal, but it was a really huge learning lesson for me. And that's when I was in my SoulCycle phase. And so to give anyone perspective into the SoulCycle journey, and it may be different now. This is like 2016, which, whoa, 5 years ago, that's crazy. But the journey to become a SoulCycle instructor is freaking hard as heck. So I had to audition. The auditions are like, it feels like you're going up against like Simon Cowell judging you on American Idol. Like, it's so intense and so emotion driven, and it's very long. You're in the room while other people are auditioning as well. It's crazy. So I had to audition, didn't make it through, which makes sense. I was not a good writer as in a SoulCycle writer. I had a terrible fear of public speaking. I had no experience teaching fitness, so I don't know why I thought I was going to get through that first time, but I did not. Then I auditioned a second time, miraculously got through, and then got accepted into the 10-week training program, which was one of the most intense experiences of my life it was crazy in like a really beautiful way, in a transformative way, but also in a really grueling way as well. So I went through that 10-week training program, gave it my heart and soul. By the way, I had an incredible group of people following me on Instagram, I think around 70,000 at that point. So they were very aware of my journey as well. And I hit that 10-week mark, went in for my final interview, and they're like, yeah, you didn't pass. Like, you can't be a SoulCycle instructor. And it came out of left field, and it was such a huge failure at the time. But I think a really great lesson that I learned from that was, if you really, really want something, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. Like, just because you want something really badly and just because you work really hard at it does not mean it's just going to be handed to you on a silver platter. And if you get a no in the process of working towards something or becoming something, and you take that no and go, oh, right, I guess that's the end of the road for me, then I'm going to, and I would have done the same thing for myself. I would have questioned, like, how badly did you actually want this thing? Is this something that you really, truly wanted to achieve or become, etc.? So it was a really good lesson in that, to just kind of muster up grit and just keep going. If you really want something, like, you're going to get no's in the process. So that was, I think, one of my biggest failures. I think the second part of your question with fear is a little bit more applicable to leaving SoulCycle. And I bring that up because it was my whole identity. It was my everything. It was my dream. It was such a huge part of me as a person. It was a huge part of my online identity on Instagram. Even though I posted about other things, that title of SoulCycle instructor was very much connected to me, and people had been with me through that whole journey. And so I think to realize that something that was once your dream is no longer your dream is a really, really tough pill to swallow. Because it's like, wait a second. This is something I worked so hard for. I achieved it. I wanted it. I
told everybody I was doing it.
Yeah. And so it's like, wait a second. It's sort of an identity crisis a little bit. And so to choose to leave that, there was a lot of fear wrapped up in that decision. But I knew it was the right thing for me to pursue my own thing and kind of find myself unattached to the identity of a SoulCycle instructor.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's so powerful, because I feel like we see, honestly, even with our friends and people that we know dearly, like, especially after graduating college, like, it becomes such a difficult situation where it's like, you either thought you were going to get your dream job, or you thought things were going to be a certain way, and then having to adapt and decide, either do I really want this thing and I don't have it right now, and being okay with that, or fighting for it, or this other side of like, I don't actually want to do this. And how do I kind of take that and find different strengths, or find something else that I love? Or if there is like a financial component, which for a lot of people there is, like, how do I find stability without, knowing what fills me up? And there are so many different things. So I think that the way that you were able to find peace, even through the difficulty of all of those decisions, will give a lot of people, some hope and some other ways to look at it.
Yeah, especially in terms of identity too, because I feel like what Brenda and I are learning is that, like, your identity, like, can change a million times in your 20s. And I think feeling kind of like unprepared for that, like, when I first entered my 20s. And I wish maybe someone had prepared me more, like, at the beginning of my 20s, and said, like, your identity is going to change like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
Totally.
And but also, again, I think it's one of those things that until you're like actually in it, you might not believe or like accept. But it is great to hear those stories, because it's just so true.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's this association that we have too, to take one step further, I think, with failure, that like shifting what you wanted to do, or what you believe, or who you consider yourself, or what other people refer to you as, is like a failure, when it's really just a shift. It's part of life, it's part of the process. So that's super powerful. But to kind of get some tips on what you're super passionate about right now, which is all things social media, helping people grow, learn, evolve, we want to get super specific. What would be your top 3 tips for like increasing your reach, engagement, growth, all those things?
Ooh, loaded question, but I like it. Okay, so I'm going to give you like a semi-complicated answer, because anytime I talk about social media, I try and give like as many tips as possible. So the first tip is actually going to be threefold, and it's really figuring out some inward facing components. I think that people tend to, whether you're a content creator, whether you're just wanting to build your online presence, whether you are a business, what happens is people tend to jump to like step 6, step 7, and they're wondering why they're having so many problems and getting so frustrated, can't figure out what they're going to post. It's because they haven't done steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just made those steps up, but you get what I mean. So figuring out these inward facing components of understanding your story. You are what is going to stand out and make your online presence, and of course your real life presence, unique. There's going to be other fitness instructors. There are going to be other social media coaches. There's going to be other t-shirt brands and interior designers. And perhaps they're even talking about the same things that you're talking about. But if you inject and weave your personality, your quirks, the things that you've been through, your experience into the fabric of your social media presence, that is ultimately what's going to help you stand out. So your story, also figuring out your niche. Now, people get really kind of worried about this niche thing. They think that they're getting boxed in. They don't know how to define it. The simplest way to figure this out is, if you're a business, is figuring out what problem do you solve. And it doesn't have to be, I solve this problem, but if you are a mindset coach, in general, if you had to sum up in a sentence how you help people or how you solve a problem, what would that be? I am a mindset coach and I help women in their 20s overcome imposter syndrome, for example. So for businesses, it's a little bit more of the problem you solve. For a content creator, it might just be how you benefit people's lives. There's a guy that I follow on TikTok. His name is Rod, R-O-D, and he's not necessarily solving any problems with his content, but it's very much based on millennial humor, and all of his things are different skits and talks about things around that genre. And so he's benefiting people's lives by creating really targeted humor around the millennial subject. It doesn't have to be this big, heavy thing, but you do have to have your finger on the pulse of how you are either problem solving or benefiting. And the last thing within step number one here is also figuring out your ideal client or your ideal follower. Who are you trying to connect with? Who are you creating content for? Who are you speaking to in your captions, in your reels, and sometimes your stories, but those can be a little bit more casual. All right, that's number one. Number two is showing up consistently. It's like posting a couple times a week, creating content on a regular basis. It sounds so simple. However, it's quite challenging to execute. And it's a matter of figuring out those first pieces in step one. It's creating your content pillars, brainstorming topic ideas, and taking a little time each week to content plan. So you have to show up consistently in order to really connect with people on a regular basis. And the last thing is a little bit more of a tricky one, perhaps not the most tangible tip, but it's also like releasing the need for things like vanity metrics, likes, follower count, view count, comments, etc., to define your worth, because everyone is just constantly being held back by the fact that they don't have enough followers. Oh my goodness, this post performed poorly, therefore I suck and I should not create any more content. If you're only really basing your worth based on these numbers, you are just going to dig yourself into a deeper hole, which is only going to affect things like your growth and engagement in the way that you are cultivating community.
Oh my God, amazing. So such incredible tips. We're going to dive into 1, 2, and 3 because they're all so important. So going off of the first one, when it comes to like niche and personal brand, what do you have any tips on like how people can figure out what is that niche thing about them? What is their personal brand? Are there specific tools that you offer in your courses that help people get really clear and specific on those things?
Yeah, I think it's diving deeper into those elements. And it's also first figuring out, what category are you falling into? Are you a content creator? And I am careful to say content creator, not influencer, not because I think influencer is a bad thing, but I do think there is a distinction between content creator, influencer. So perhaps you're one of those. You might be influencer, you might be content creator. Or if you have a specific service-based business, you're a life coach, you're a health coach, you're a personal trainer, you're a relationship coach, whatever that is, you're in the service-based industry. And if you're selling t-shirts, jewelry, whatever, vintage furniture, you're more in the product base. So it's one, figuring out what are you falling into categorically so that you can better inform how you are showing up on social media, because some of those are going to require selling and actually promoting what you do or offer. And then from there, it's diving into those 3 key branding components that we spoke about. It's writing out your story from start to finish. This is an assignment that I give my students, pulling out the 3 to 5 key components of your life that make you, you, and it could be more than that. If you're a business, I would recommend doing those 3 to 5 key components for you as a person, and also those 3 to 5 key components for you as a business owner, because sometimes they cross over and sometimes they don't. So just getting more specific with that, and then really defining your niche and your ideal client, and if you're selling something, in your ideal follower if you're more in the content creator or influencer space. For someone who is just like, I have no idea what I like or what I want to do, it doesn't have to be so serious at first. It might just be creating and dipping your toe in the water of, oh, maybe it's interior design, or maybe it's really talking and sharing your inspiration. You're more of a spoken person, or you really enjoy writing in a more long form content. Maybe you are a freaking transition queen and you excel with short form content and reels, and it's not necessarily about writing really inspirational things, but you are creative as heck with how you show up in your delivery of your video editing. So it's just kind of like exploring. If you don't know right now, you don't have to have an answer and say, I need the niche and ideal client, if you don't even really know the direction you're heading in yet.
Yeah, my goodness, so many incredible tips. Once you figure that out, once you're like, okay, I know my brand, I know my niche, I know all these things, how, being that you mentioned there are a bunch of, people that teach fitness and relationship and all that stuff, what do you think makes people like stand out? How can you stand out? Of course, people are always looking to grow and reach more people. And a lot of times it might be for a different reason, but for a lot of reasons it is to help people and, get their message out there. So yeah, what are your tips for standing out?
I think people are so afraid to just be themselves. They're so afraid of letting whatever guard down it is, due to people judging them, due to people talking about them or thinking something, that it's easier for them. I call it kind of staying in the lukewarm, where you're just kind of palatable to everyone, versus being more in the red hot zone, where by being yourself, perhaps by speaking about your values, you are going to piss some people off. Or maybe it's not that extreme. Maybe some people are just like, that girl's freaking like weird, or that's annoying that she talks so much about that. Something like that, annoying, pissed off, whatever. But being in that red hot zone, you're really going to pull your people in, and then also repel some people away. But I much rather be in that red hot zone where my people are my people, and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm along for the ride with Jera, and other people are gonna not really like me as much, which is the case. There's plenty of people out there that don't like me, and I don't love that. I'm a serial people pleaser, so that's not the easiest thing for me to come to terms with. But I'd rather be me and have people not like me for it than live in that lukewarm space where people are just kind of so I think letting your guard down, and to give some specific tips around that, it's letting people into your life and what you do. But what I like to teach is letting people into your mind. So a lot of people are like, and I just had this on a call yesterday with my students, like, I'm not interesting. Like, why does anyone want to watch me? I don't do anything all day. I'm kind of just working. And I know people listening probably aren't seeing us right now, but you guys can. My entire life right now is spent at this desk. Like, I just work all the time. It's also COVID, so I'm not really out doing much. And so I don't really have a lot to show in my stories either. Like, I used to be a SoulCycle instructor running around the city. I was going to cool influencer events and hanging out with my friends. And now it's like me and my old dog and my husband, and I love them. So, but it's just not the most exciting thing. So my trick is to let people into my mind, and it's letting people into either your quirks, your personality, or the weird things going into your head. Like, I'll sing, like, cut my life in 2 pieces. This is my last resort. Like, that pops into my head. I'll put it on my stories and sing it to the camera. There's a potato with a weird vine growing out of it. Like, oh, let's show stories. This is strange. I realized the way that the word segue is spelled, which is such a bizarre spelling, learned how to spell it. And I'm go on stories and say, y'all's like, do you know how to spell segue? Did you know it was spelled this way? And then you do a poll and people get really excited and heated about that. Cause they're like, wait, I had no idea segue was spelled that way. So it's letting people into these little moments, or, you can armpit fart. I'll put that on my stories. And I do tend to lean more towards the goofy and weird side. So if you are not goofy and weird, that doesn't have to be your thing. You can still let people into kind of the idiosyncrasies and quirks that just happen within the state of you.
Right. Totally makes sense. Like, what are you putting out there? What are you selling? And then being authentic with that, and letting people into your mind. If you're just fashion, letting people into your mind in like the fashion sense, or like whatever you're doing.
Totally.
I think that really makes it clear, because I think I think a lot of times people feel like they need, and like you said before, like, are you really good at reels? Are you really good at this? Like, I think people feel like they have to do it all.
Yeah.
Especially because nowadays, especially with like TikTok and stuff, like everything is like, if you're not constantly creating like all the time, I think people feel like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm failing, or, you know, I'll never get to a place where this person is because they're putting out like 70 TikToks a day or whatever.
Yeah.
So it can be overwhelming, but I think that it's nice news to know that like you could have your thing and let people in that way.
Yes, absolutely. Just let people into the weird, let your freak flag fly, as I like to say. Let it wave nice and high.
I love it. Oh, sorry, Brenda, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say that I think that a lot of times we get caught up in like providing value. And I think that sometimes value can be something, like you said, like entertainment, something silly, something that catches someone's attention or they find interesting. Like it doesn't have to be life-changing every time. I know that's something I get caught up in, even with our podcast page. Like when it comes to our actual episodes, I think we have a nice combination of like silly and real and raw and relatable. And then when it comes to our feed, it's a lot of like updates. So you're really getting my my wheels turning when it comes to our social media.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that you bring up that I do like to speak about as well, because providing value, you hear it all the time, provide value, everything must be value. And I agree with that to an extent, but it's what is the interpretation of value? And I think it's a really wide range. So it can be inspiring people, it can be educating people, but like you said, it can also be entertaining people. But here's the distinction. There's a difference between lighthearted and not super deep or long or heavy and just kind of entertaining, and something that's fluffy. So the biggest offender for a piece of fluff, and I'm, a little bit of fluff here and there is okay. I'm not saying it has to be 100% non-fluff all the time. But I think the biggest type of offender is like a caption along the lines of like Sunday vibes, like anything that's a Sunday vibes or vacation vibes. I always use that example. Does drive me a little bit cuckoo bananas, because to me it feels like you're posting just to post. That's what a fluffy caption or a fluffy well, I guess you can't really have a fluffy photo, but more of a fluffy caption is. It's just saying I want to post this just because, versus something that's entertaining. There's an end goal of the person consuming it or reading it feeling something, which is a smile or a laugh or just kind of something lighthearted that lifts them up.
That I'm so glad you talked about that. I think that is like an incredible tip, because I was wondering that, like, because you hear people say that all the time. I was like, like what really is like fluff and what really is like entertainment and funny, and that is like the perfect breakdown for it. It like totally makes sense.
Yes,
so thank you for that tip. So good.
Got it.
On a less fun note, I think it's less fun, but like other people might think it's fun. You're always hearing the term thrown around, like the algorithm, needing to use the algorithm. How important really is this? And like what if people are wanting to start to get to know how to use this, where's kind of like the first place that you usually point them to?
The algorithm is my least favorite topic, but I'm glad we're talking about it, because I like to talk about why it's my least favorite thing.
Amazing, go.
So I think what happens in the realm of social media and life in general is that it's much easier to get caught up / complain / talk about things that are almost like busy work. So people like to, and I've done this before, so I'm not saying you're awful for doing this, but it's kind of recognizing that when you talk about things like worrying about the algorithm or trying to think, I must figure out the best time to post and it's a 2-minute window on this day, or what are the most perfect hashtags, like those will solve all my problems. This is kind of like busy work versus actually getting to the root of the issue or the root of the problem. So when people really obsess about the algorithm, I wish they would spend more time developing their content strategy or coming up with new creative ways to present themselves on Reels, or opening up more about themselves and letting people into the quirks and what's going on in their heads in stories. I mean, we are all dealing with the algorithm and it freaking sucks. Like my reach is half of what it was a couple years ago, maybe even a third. I'm constantly losing followers. Like I'll be super real about this stuff. I'm not gonna pretend it's all roses all the time, and it doesn't feel good when you're post doesn't perform well, or it's half the reach that it used to be, or you see the follower number go down. But I just think there's bigger issues at hand. And so my biggest piece of advice for anyone worrying about the algorithm, anytime you find yourself complaining or worrying about that, let's shift to, okay, well, how consistently are you posting? Can we work on content planning a little bit more? Let's take a look at your captions. Are they maybe more in the fluff realm, or are they providing value in some shape or form? Are you educating, giving tips, inspiration? Could we work even on, I don't really push aesthetics too much because I think there's more value in your messaging, but can we work on maybe your photos a little bit more? I think just there's better time spent than worrying about the stupid freaking algorithm.
Yeah, definitely. That helps a lot, especially because I'm pretty sure, as far as we know, that it's constantly changing too. So it's like, how can you keep up with all of these shifts and adjustments? And you mentioned it before in terms of focusing on scheduling or planning content out and stuff like that. How important do you think planning and scheduling content out is? And what are your top tips for content creation in general?
I think that planning, and when I say planning, I mean just kind of getting a feel for what's coming up ahead, because I don't really like scheduling. If anyone's wondering like, oh, should I schedule something so that it auto posts for me? I'm happy to chat about that after, but I don't love scheduling. I want you to be live in the app and pushing things to post. But from a content planning perspective, I think it's important to a degree for a couple of reasons. One, when we are constantly relying on inspiration every single day to strike, you're kind of not setting yourself up for success, because there's going to be a week, maybe a couple days, when you wake up and you're like, yes, I have a photo ready to go, or I'm feeling cute today, so I want to take a photo. I have an idea of a caption. But when you're living in a reactive mode like that, when it comes to social media, well, next week, either you're going to be super busy or you're in an inspiration rut, and then you're not going to post for a week, you're not going to post for 2 weeks, that type of thing. So we want to get out of the reactive mode and into proactive mode with content planning. And it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. So it's as quote unquote simple as looking at the calendar for the month ahead and creating 2 steps. So you're going to do a monthly bird's eye view, and you do have to do some other work prior to this, like understand what your content pillars are, have a whole nice list of brainstorming of different topics underneath each of those content pillars. But once that work is done for your monthly bird's eye view, you're just plopping the content pillars and the topics into the calendar. So let's say you want to post 4 times a week, and maybe just for example purposes, you have 4 content pillars. Then it goes, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then you do 4 different days for the next week, just so that you have a rough idea of how your content pillars and how your topics are spread throughout the month. Now, for most people, getting more granular than that in one chunk is a little bit too overwhelming. Some people will like to get more granular, but in general, the typical next step is to spend some time, for example, on a Thursday, developing your weekly granular plan. So you look at the week coming up, you've already assigned the content pillars and the topics. So now it's a matter of, all right, I'm either going to batch write my captions, or at the very least kind of have a little bit of a bullet point list going on, because some people do like to just write day of, which I'm a good writer. I can, well, maybe I'm not the best writer, but I tend to write quickly, and I don't need a lot of time to do so. So it is easy for me to just write on the spot. So it's kind of figuring out, all right, do you need that bullet point list, or are you going to batch write? And then also making sure you either have a plan for your photos, you have those photos taken, you're scrolling in your camera roll to see what old photos you can use. Perhaps you make graphics, so you're getting those ready, because when it comes time to the day of posting, you want it to be as simple as, all right, here's the photo, I'm ready to post it, I'm copying and pasting my caption. Maybe I know my hashtags if I'm playing around with hashtags, and I've even assigned the time in which I'm posting. So I know at 12 o'clock on Monday, all I'm doing is hitting post, and that's really going to help you be more consistent, that type of planning. However, for anyone, and this comes up as a resistant point, people go, I want to feel authentic in the moment and just whatever comes to mind, you can still do that. So if on Monday you go, wait, I really don't want to post about my 3 style tips, I want to talk about my morning routine, I feel really passionate about it in this exact moment, great. If you have a caption that you can easily flow into, if you have a photo ready to go, post about that, and just take whatever you planned for that day and shift it to another day. So it allows you to still be reactive, but in a just a much more secure type of plan to ensure consistency.
Guys, get in her course.
Yes.
It's all so good. And I just love the way that you break everything down. I think it's super digestible and it doesn't seem scary. Like, I think,
Good. I'm
can be
glad.
scared by this stuff. No, it's so great. I'm so appreciative for you sharing so many tips with us.
Yeah.
Seriously, get in her course, everybody. Switching gears just a tiny bit. There is a lot of like noise and stuff about how like social media is like so bad for us and like all the negative things that the effects that social media can have. And even, personally being on social media sometimes and like feeling negative after scrolling or blah, blah, blah. What are some of the more positive things that you see social media do? And what are some of the positive things that social media has done for your life and your relationships and your communities?
I think the first thing to acknowledge is that social media is not inherently good. It's not inherently bad. If you want a little metaphor and, think of a hammer can be this great tool. You can make a bookshelf, but with that hammer, you can also destroy that bookshelf or bring damage to something. And it can be a negative, destructive thing. So social media really is a tool and it's how we use it, and setting yourself up to scroll in an intentional way, mute, follow, block accounts that don't serve you or bring negative energy to you. So you really are in control and in the driver's seat with how you are consuming and how you're also showing up. So that's one thing I just wanted to say for anyone who that may help. But for specific examples for how I've found sort of positivity in that more connecting and awesome side of social media, one, it completely changed my life. It's how I pivoted, and on that April 4th, 2015, really took that first step in a new direction, because Instagram was this opening up into this world of content creation. I mean, I come from an art background, so I do like that creative aspect of it. I've always been interested and I have enjoyed writing. So that writing aspect came to me, and that community aspect as well. So it changed my life. I think that there's this beautiful aspect of it that connects us on a deeper level. It helps us feel less alone. Like, I've had moments where I've scrolled and learned something either about a topic or a person, and I've been like, wow, that really kind of hit deep with something that I've either thought of or experienced, and it's made me feel more normal or less alone or more connected to other people, even though I haven't met them. And I've had the same for people reaching out to me. I've had so many people, for whatever topic it is, send me a DM or a comment and say, thank you so much for sharing this. I really needed to hear this today. Or thank you for sharing about your social anxiety and getting a therapist a couple of years ago. It made me realize that this is something I need too. And I just booked my first consultation with a therapist. Or one of my favorite posts, this is from many years ago, I posted about butt pimples. I accidentally ordered this thong bikini. I thought it was a regular bottom. I never wear thong bikinis, and I'm in Tulum. And I'm like, oh shit, like I really want to wear this bathing suit, but I have butt pimples because, well, one, in general, they just happened. And two, as a SoulCycle instructor, they were awful. It was a big problem. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to wear this thong bikini and I'll have butt pimples, and let me take a photo of this and talk about it. And I could not believe the response that I got. People were just like, oh my God, I've never seen anyone talk about this. It's something that I felt so embarrassed about for X amount of time. This really makes me feel more normal and less alone in this kind of butt pimple problem I'm experiencing. But it's funny, we can laugh about it, but it actually can be this really big,
absolutely,
or acne, that type of thing. So those type of moments where either I felt less alone in whatever it is I've experiencing or thinking, and sort of the same reflected back with how I've been able to provide that to other people and community, I think has been a huge positive part of Instagram and social media.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that to be able to like break down your walls, like I think when you are able to show up authentically for others, it's really peaceful for yourself, because I do believe that with like the likes and comments and the algorithm and everything, like it can be, of course you want to show up as your best self a lot of the time, but I think a lot of times it can be like a performance, which again, some people have personalities that they want to share and stuff like that. But I feel like we've seen time and time again that vulnerability, authenticity, all that stuff that you're sharing with something like a butt pimple anecdote, it really does make people be like, oh, she's human, you know, and she's like me, and brings it kind of back down. So how would you say, and I'm sure it's related to your last answer, but how would you say you've cultivated specifically such a strong, authentic, and like supportive community around you from then, and how have you kind of maintained that through these transitions in your life?
I think a couple of things. One has been really just being open for the most part. I have boundaries and not necessarily sharing every single detail of my life, but being fairly open about my life and what I've experienced. So that soul cycle journey, taking people along for the ride and opening up about the failure of it in a very public way. A lot of the pivots that I've mentioned here already have all been throughout my social media journey as well. Even things like getting married in the middle of COVID in March in 2020 and sort of the twists and turns of that. And it's essentially just not showing that things are perfect all the time. It's letting people into both the ups and the downs so that when you have those up moments, those successes, people also know that you've been through some crappy times as well. And not that you need people to validate your successes, but I think it just makes it, if you are someone who is on social media, it just makes it easier to connect to that person and celebrate when they have those up moments. You know that they've also had those down moments as well. So I think letting people into the journey, into the challenges, the successes, and the failures has been, I don't want to say it's been a tool in creating community because I don't necessarily think of it that way, but it's just something that I've sort of embraced as these years have gone on. And I think it's also connecting back to what we chatted about earlier with letting people into your quirks and your personalities. I got a DM the other day. I forget exactly what it was, but it's probably one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten. She's like, I don't know you, but I feel like you're a really good friend. And to me, that was such a beautiful feeling. I was like, that's kind of how I want everyone to feel.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be me, and I want to let you into my life and the weirdness and the mundaneness of it all sometimes. And for someone to feel connected to me on a level of friendship, I think that's a really special thing. And I know not everyone necessarily feels that way, but once again, it's about calling in your people living in that red hot zone so that those people feel like your friends and feel that connection to you. So I think that's the other thing that comes to mind with that.
Yeah, oh, I love that. Speaking of connection and validation, do you have any like tips or practices that you use that help detach like your worth from the amount of likes that you get or the amount of engagement that you get? I think especially starting out, people can feel like, you know, if they haven't gotten a certain amount of likes, that is a reflection of their worth. So what's your kind of advice on that?
I think one thing when it comes to the follower count, because that's always such a big one, is if you can shift your mindset to focusing on the people that you do have, whether that's 50, 100, 3,000, 10,000, versus constantly wondering and focusing and thinking about the people you don't have. And if you're thinking about constantly getting more followers, that's an easy way to identify if you are constantly thinking about the people that you don't have. And so what happens when you're stuck in that mode is no number is actually ever going to satisfy you, because if you're, oh, I just need to get to 10K and I get the swipe up, you'll get there maybe, and it's kind of fun in the moment, you feel accomplished, but quickly that sort of rush of serotonin and endorphins or whatever those things are, it's going to subside, and then you're going to say, oh, I'll be happy when I get to 15, I'll be happy when I get to 20 or whatever that number is. And so it's sort of building up your worth on, I don't know what a good metaphor is, on sand or something like that, something that's not stable. So if you can instead shift your focus to the people that you do have, you're then kind of feeling gratitude for the people who have already hit the follow button. Like, you want followers, and those people are there. Like, you have some people following you. And so if you can nurture that relationship, it's going to help you feel more fulfilled with how you're showing up. So that's one thing I think with follower count. The other thing is measuring success on things besides just vanity metrics. So something I encourage my students to do is to screenshot anytime you get a nice comment, a nice DM, something that you hear from your community. Because sometimes you get something and it's nice in the moment, but then you kind of forget it. I do this for myself as well. I screenshot it and then I'll put it in a little folder on my phone called like nice DMs or something like that. And anytime you're having like a bad day, or maybe someone says something not nice to you, or you're stuck on the amount of likes or comments that you got, it's kind of nice to take a little walk through memory lane and see those nice things that either people said about you, or it's something about your content that was really fulfilling for them. So if you can kind of shift your measure of success to those more tangible things besides vanity metrics, which really is the impact and the effect that you're having on people, I think that's a really great tool as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's super helpful. And I think it can be hard sometimes to, to do that. Obviously, it's obviously easier said than done, but to actually look at the people. I love that you said like focusing on the people that you do have, just because I think it's, we're constantly seeking more and more and more, and it really is never enough. You're focusing on the next goal, and goals are fabulous, but it's just like there are some things that you don't have that much control over. So if you are embracing that authentic part, it'll probably be more fulfilling as well along the way. Yeah, for sure. But in terms of, you mentioned this before, and I know it's a big piece of your story with social anxiety, just to kind of switch the gears a little bit and be relatable in that sense. What is social anxiety for people that don't know? How has it impacted your life, or your life specifically? And how has that shifted over time as your life has shifted?
Yeah, especially like being on social media.
Yeah, I know, right? Kind of weird combination. Social anxiety it's going to be different for every single person. So it's not just one specific description of how to qualify it. For me specifically, it's anxiety that is produced from social situations or from impending social situations. And that anxiety can manifest by feelings inside of you, like just being stressed about it or tightening of your chest. For me, it's been something where I get really hot and I start to sweat, and that is like, well, I'm not going to say it's the worst, because there's many things that people will say are the worst because it's their situation, but to be standing with someone in conversation where your face is heating up and like you start to sweat and they're like, well, why is this person sweating? Like, I'm wearing a sweater. It can be very embarrassing and shameful. And so those kind of physical manifestations of my social anxiety combined with the stress and the thoughts really affected me. And it was also during the time that I mentioned where I was having that shit job, hair falling out. And so it was just, I don't know what kind of, it was probably a snowball effect, to be totally honest. And it took some time. I didn't even realize that there was a name for what I was experiencing until I kind of Googled it and realized, like, wait a second, like, this isn't just some random thing. This is a real thing that people experience. And it kind of validated me that I wasn't just, not that I was like crazy, but that there was a name to what I was experiencing. And I looked up different, I always forget, there's like therapists and psychologists. I forget which one is which, but we'll just say therapists for now. And he was in my area. And I'll never forget at the time having an initial phone call with him, just like a 10-minute consultation. And the immediate weight I felt just talking to him and realizing there was someone who could help me was just sort of indescribable at the time. And I worked with him for about a year. And I think the biggest thing to realize with anxiety, and probably with a lot of things in life, is that you don't necessarily ever get away, have them disappear. It's not that they just go away forever. It's really learning how to manage them. And so that was what I learned over that year, is really managing social anxiety. And I think I'm a lot better now. I think I'm also an introvert, which doesn't necessarily help things, because I like to be at home. Like, I could be at home for a month and like not talk to anyone and I'd be fine, which is very strange. And perhaps that's why social media is, I don't want to say easy for me, but it's a way for me to be social without necessarily having to be with everyone all the time. So I just kind of thought about that on the spot. It's not something I've really dove into specifically, but that would be my initial hypothesis of why social media really, really works for me. It allows me to be social without having to be in like a big group of people all the time, which is not my favorite.
So cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we were interested in talking to you about it, because it is having social anxiety and then also being such like a public kind of person, it's
Yes.
interesting to see that dynamic. And I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning of turning to social media for community. And it's like this beautiful way to like have community in a way that you can kind of curate for your comfort. And I think sometimes we lose sight like that you can really curate your feed. You can curate the people that you are allowing into your life if that's something that you need to have a little bit more control over sometimes in order to feel your most comfortable, best, amazing self.
Totally.
So I love that. And I think, again, that kind of goes to the switching the perspective of social media actually being able to be this really positive thing. And so I just love that part of your story. We're going to get to our last few questions here because, Jera, you've been so incredible with your time and your tips, and we're so grateful.
Thank you.
We want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about the what you do with your one-on-one students and social media saloon, and anything you want to like pimp out about those two options.
Yeah, for sure. So there's two ways to work with me at the moment, but there's other things brewing, so we'll see what the future holds. What I want to put forward the most, it really is my favorite way to work with people, is through my group coaching course. It's called the Social Media Saloon. I don't know why it's Western themed. I just liked how it sounded. So for anyone wondering about that, it just kind of rolls off the tongue. But it's a 3-month group coaching course. It is for service-based businesses, product-based businesses, and content creators as well. And it is all about helping you use social media and really transforming your experience on the app so that you can either use it as a powerful and positive tool to create your online presence and or support your business as well. And we deep dive into topics such as social media mindset, branding, which we spoke a little bit about today. We dive into messaging strategies, super deep, aesthetics, visuals, photo taking, understanding everything about reels, hashtags, analytics, content planning, community building, IG Live, like any topic that is related to Instagram, we dive deep into it, hence why it's such a sort of robust and long program. So that happens usually, gosh, I've had the Social Media Saloon for over a year now. I'm currently in my 4th cohort right now. So it's about 3 to 4 groups per year. The next one will be kicking off in July. And I think I have a little link in my bio right now to sign up for the wait list. But so you can either check there or thesocialmediasaloon.com. And then I do take on a limited amount of one-on-one clients as well. So if anyone's interested in that, just shoot me an email, jera@jerabean.com.
Amazing. Sign up, get on that wait list.
Yes.
And out of curiosity for like your days and how they kind of go, do you have any daily practices, rituals, or routines that you incorporate?
I am awful at this question. I'm going to be honest. No. Like, I feel like you hear about people starting their own businesses and like having their life figured out, which, it's a little bit more figured out than it used to be. But I don't got no rituals. I don't got no routines. I sort of have this, I just let the day flow. I'm working on that because I don't know if that's the best way to go about things, but that's currently how my brain is working. And, trying to incorporate a little bit more exercise back into my life and some things to kind of fill my cup. Because I would say the last year where I was really creating the saloon and focusing so heavily on that, it was a labor and is a labor of love. But that really took up so much of my time, 7 days a week, kind of 12 plus hours a day for about a year. And so I'm kind of unlearning right now how to get out of that mode where all I'm doing is living, breathing, eating, work, and kind of finding my life again. So I'm in transition to kind of creating those routines, to be super real with you.
I love it. Do what works for you. Not everyone has this crazy thing that they do all the time. It's what works for you. Oh my God, I see your little dog in the back. Oh my God, hi.
Yes, yeah. If anyone heard clip clopping, and sometimes he likes to cough very loudly, which I think he has spared you during this episode. But my
I just had to point him out because it just
he's the best.
But our last question for you. This does not have to be related to social media.
Okay.
If it wants to be, but if you could tell 20-year-old Jera one thing, what would you tell her?
Oh, it's a deep one. It's a tough one, but it's an important one. Let me think about this for a second.
Take your time.
I think I would tell her something along the lines of kind of trusting the process a little bit. I think in your 20s, you feel like you need to have things figured out and knowing what the next step is and having some sort of plan. And it's not necessarily about being so loose and going with the flow. Like, I wish I started saving money when I was earlier. Like, that's something that maybe you want to plan out. But in terms of you, your life, your identity, it doesn't have to have such a rigid plan, or you don't have to have all these answers. I think just knowing that you're going to shift and change and discover yourself in that process, in that journey, perhaps would have released a little bit more pressure off of me and a weight off my shoulders. So I think I would have told her something along those lines.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. My goodness. I feel like that is everything that someone in their 20s needs to hear right now. We are in a phase where we crave structure and knowing and all these things, and so much is out of our control that I think just we hear more and more, trust the process. The universe has a grander plan, whatever it is that people believe in. Everything does kind of work out for a specific reason. So that was so powerful. Thank you.
Love it.
Yeah, and genuinely, you have been so incredible. I can't imagine, for people that are just curious about the social media game or actually have a business or are looking to learn more, this was like, I want to say, one of the most what an
crash course.
Yes,
Yes.
a crash course. This is so valuable.
Oh, I'm so glad. That makes me happy.
Thank you so much, Jera. I will link all of the socials in the show notes and how you can get in touch with her if you're interested in the program or her one-on-one coaching. And thank you so much for being with us. This was so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.